Wherever I go. Dr. Jim Aframo, please give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the book is going around. Who knows the title of the book?
The Champion's Mind.
Okay. Now, here's the cool thing, and this is what I love about psychology. Is everyone as tall as, give me your favorite basketball player?
Larry Bird.
Larry Bird was how tall? 6'9". Okay. Who has the wingspan of Michael Phelps? He's got a pretty big wingspan. Does everyone know who he is? Okay. How about Usain Bolt? What's he good at? He's got fast twitch muscle fibers. Okay. We all might not have the same physical talent as some of these champions, but everyone has the capacity to have the same mindset as these champions to bring out our best self. So that's the champion's mind. No one has a champion's mind gene, so we could all develop it, which is really important, okay? So I do sports psychology, and I'm also a licensed counselor. What do you think I do in terms of sports psychology? What do you guys think? So when I work with an athlete or a team, what are some of the things that we talk about and work on? And again, all this relates to you guys because, like I said, everyone could learn to think like a champion, and when you really think about it, life is kind of like an athletic endeavor where you have to bring your best self and you have to be confident and focused and all that good stuff. Whether you're taking an exam or audition for, let's say, you're an instrument if you're a musician. But what do you think I do in sports psychology? Okay, give her a hand. Okay. One of the keys, so I would call that self-talk. There's a saying I really like, which is positive self-talk isn't always going to be helpful, but negative self-talk is usually 100% effective. Okay, so if we're beating ourselves up, if we're being really hard on ourselves, if we're being really negative, we know for a fact that's not going to help. Now, positive self-talk isn't going to hurt, and it's probably going to help a lot. Okay, Roger Federer. Who's Roger Federer? Tennis player, maybe the best of all time. He said the game changer for him in his whole career was when he was a younger player and he would get pretty negative. And he said, you know what, the sport will beat me up by itself. I need to stay positive. He said that was the biggest game changer from him going to a contender to a champion. So self-talk is important. What else do I work with athletes on?
Helping them cope with pressure.
Okay. What kind of pressure do you guys face and athletes face and all of us face in life? Okay, expectations from others and ourselves, right? Okay. So that's a big one, okay? Think about, like, let's say an Olympic athlete. You train 4 years for the Olympics, and, in some races, whether in swimming or track and field, it might come down to one play, one throw, 1 inch in terms of whether you medal, make the team, whatever. So that's important. So you have to do your best when it counts the most. That's about pressure, okay? What else? Other things I might work with an athlete on, then we'll get into some details, but what do you guys think?
I know I got some athletes in the room.
Yeah, raise your hand if you're an athlete, student athlete. And raise your hand if everyone's if you have a body, you're an athlete, but we all have to walk and run, but raise your hand if you're a student athlete. And then recreational athlete. Okay. And if you work out. Okay. Another big area would be when we have performance setbacks, slumps, losing streaks, those kind of things. Injuries is a big one. And you know what's fascinating about injuries? So I'm biased because I'm all about psychology, but a lot of the athletes I work with who have sustained a major injury, I've asked them, what was going on in your life around that time? And usually, I just broke up with my boyfriend or girlfriend, or my parents divorced, or I wasn't performing well in my sport. And so if you're not mentally in the right frame of mind, why are you more likely to get injured on the field? Number one, you're distracted, so you're in your head, you're not paying attention, so you don't have that situational awareness. What else? If you're really stressed out, what's going to happen to your muscles in your body? You're going to be tense, uptight. You're not going to be as quick or as athletic, so you're going to put yourself in harm's way a little bit more. in a position to hurt yourself less likely than you would otherwise. So that's a big one. Is a lot of times, we think of injuries as 100% physical, but a lot of times it's the mental part going into it, how much stress we're under. And research shows that if you're more stressed out, you're more likely to get injured. And then in terms of recovery too. So it's kind of like a grieving process after you get injured. How long am I going to be out? This isn't fair. You get angry, you get depressed, you're in shock for a while, all that kind of stuff. So you have to work through that. So that's a big mental part. Okay? And what I tell athletes is make rehab your new sport until you get your game back. So just like we talked about with sports, and school and any area of your life, it's the mental game that counts most. So same thing in rehab. Do you have a great attitude? Are you focused when you're doing your rehab exercises? All that kind of good stuff. Okay? What else for sports psychology?
Motivation to practice and exercise?
Yes. Here's a tip for you guys. Never forget this tip. So this is a tip about motivation. The champions I work with, so I'm pretty fortunate I get to work with, I've worked with ASU student athletes, professional athletes, pro athletes. They want to work on their motivation. They try to keep it high. But when they're not motivated, they do it anyway. And that's what we talk about commitment. So champions lean on their commitment, not their motivation. What do you think I mean by that? Yeah. So it doesn't matter, how often do we say, I don't feel like working out today, or I don't feel like studying tonight, or they're going to do it anyway, because they have that clarity in terms of what they want to accomplish, and then they're going to do it no matter what. That's commitment. So we talk a lot about motivation, and that's important, but commitment is more important. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, the neat thing about motivation, it usually comes while you're doing something, not beforehand. So let's say we all decide to go work out. How often are we 100% motivated to go work out or go to practice? Probably not 100%. But once we're doing it, then we get more motivated. So that's important to keep in mind, is never use motivation as an excuse not to get started. Because once you get started, you're going to be more motivated. Does that make sense? Okay. But professionals do their best even when they feel like it the least. Champions, professionals. So don't ever use motivation as an excuse. Okay? It's not saying it's not important. There's ways to increase your motivation, but don't rely on it 100%. Okay? Make sense? Because I'll hear sometimes, I didn't feel like working out, or I didn't feel like practicing extra for my sport, so I didn't do it. But how often do we say, I didn't feel like going to class today and didn't do it? Usually, we get ourselves to class. Okay? So just part of success is just showing up, and that's commitment. Okay? What else? Sports psychology.
Visual, imagining that you're going to do it.
Let's do that real quick. So everyone, go ahead and close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Maybe roll your head and neck around. We're just going to do 2 minutes of this. But picture yourself leaving this great school. So this would be a year and a half, a year and a half for all you guys, right? Everyone first year? Okay. So picture in a year and a half, or whenever that time would be for you guys. So close your eyes. Picture yourself walking off campus, knowing that you left here, you made an impact, you finished strong, really proud of yourself, and you've set yourself up for that next step in your career or in your education. Okay, so close it. And I really want you to see it, feel it, make the image bright, bring the image closer. So you're actually in that scene as if it were happening right now. And just imagine how good it's going to feel, and maybe what other people are thinking or saying, people close to you, your family, how proud they are as well. Okay, now while you're doing this, let's rewind a little bit. So visualization is not just picturing a successful result, it's picturing the steps that lead to that successful result. So rewind to today and then go through maybe, the next year and a half, just pick a couple things that will be different for you to make that goal a reality. So for example, showing up to every class, paying attention, taking great notes, going to office hours, surrounding yourself with other motivated students and disciplined students. So again, visualization is picturing a successful result and then picturing the steps that lead to that successful result. But then there's one more aspect of visualization that I really like, which is coping. So you use it for mastery, which we just did, but you use it for coping. So think about the one big obstacle that's going to come up between maybe now and when you would graduate from here. Might be a particular subject or a particular, I don't know, challenge, in your personal life or challenge in terms of finances, whatever. But think about coping well with that and overcoming that and not using that to stay stuck or to prevent you from reaching your ultimate goals. Okay, and then when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes, return to the room. How was that? So what athletes will do, let's say I'm working with a pro golfer, for example. What I'll have him or her do is the night before they play, visualize themselves playing the way they want to play the next day. So see and feel themselves performing well on the golf course, okay? And then so that would be the mastery part. And obviously if they know, the golf course, which they all do, they'll see themselves playing particular holes, making particular great shots, okay? The coping parts, what would be the coping part? Because you want to kind of combine the two, because not everything goes as well as you want. But you want to see yourself performing well, finishing strong, maybe even winning the tournament. But what would be the coping part? What do you guys think? So if you're playing golf tomorrow in a big golf tournament, what might you have to imagine in terms of adversity that you might need to overcome? Yeah, so you might actually picture yourself, okay, I bogeyed the first hole, put it behind, next hole, best hole. Okay, what else? What about weather conditions or course conditions? What would be some challenges?
Wind.
Yep, wind, heat in Arizona. What else?
That sand trap.
That sand trap, that's a tough one. Okay. So you would actually picture some of that, and then you would say, okay, I'm loving this challenge, this is cool, I can do it, and see yourself executing and overcoming it. Does that make sense? Now this is really important. There's studies that have shown that basically every Olympic champion does this as a regular part of their training. So it's not wishful thinking. The neat thing about visualization, it could be just 10, 15 minutes every day, every other day. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. But if you really want to get to where you want to go, see yourself actually having accomplished it. And then kind of the steps we talked about, what might come up, and then loving that challenge. Couple more quick ones. What else about sports psychology? Or what about, I also mentioned I'm a licensed counselor, so what would be things that athletes or other performers, because I don't work just with athletes, what might they come to see me about that might be going on off the course or the court or the field that might be affecting them in their everyday life, and then that could bleed onto the course or field as well?
Like balancing the roles of being an athlete and like a student or
Yes.
whatever.
So student athlete doing well at both. Okay, school and sport, okay? Or a professional maybe doing well with family, how to balance family and their career.
Balancing succeeding. So, I mean, it's a huge part of sports if you want to be successful.
Yeah.
Be confliction, saying that yourself, you're saying you're not doing very well, but easily could be. But
Very good, very good. What else?
Relationships.
Relationships is a big one, okay? Just a quick example. So if I'm working with a pro athlete that's on the road a lot of times, is that always easy with their husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend? No. So there's ways to be creative in terms of social media, in terms of Skype, in terms of all that stuff. But then when you're home, have date nights, have regular time together that's high quality. So you might not have as much physical time together, but you could still have a great relationship and make the best of it when you are together. Okay. What are some mental health issues that athletes, and all of us might deal with? Well, that could turn into one, but a lot of athletes do have challenges with coaches, and one of the best tips I ever got for that was with a client of mine who's a pro athlete, and he said, know when to listen to your coaches and know when to pretend to listen to your coaches. And what he meant by that is, sometimes, coaches are good and they mean well, but sometimes they're having a bad day. And they might, be a little negative or a little mean at times. Sometimes we take that too personal. And so part of it's learning communication strategies, part of it's learning good listening skills. When coach is saying something important, soak it in, use it, improve your game. But if coach is just having one of those days, instead of, why is he acting like that, or why is she acting like that, or she doesn't like me, it might be just let it go in one ear and out the other. Okay? Sometimes we take it too much to heart. And that's, if you want to be a champion, you have to develop a really thick skin, because people are going to beat you up. Even, your teammates might get jealous, your coaches might get negative. So, the media is going to be really tough on you, those kind of things. What are some specific mental health issues? Anxiety, what else? Depression, anxiety, substance abuse, anorexia. Okay, what sports might we see that in? Yeah, gymnastics, cross country, diving, ice skating, those kind of sports where you're being judged and you're not wearing much clothes. And it's really easy if you're at a vulnerable age. A coach might say, "Hey, you might need to, the way you look or whatever," and it can be traumatic. So, okay, when I work with athletes, a lot of times we talk about, and again, this relates to not just sports, to everything, but we talk about fear of failure or risk of failure, and fear of success or risk of success. Okay, and this one's, we mostly think about the fear of failure part, but why is that stressful? So if I'm trying to be the best athlete I can be, or the best student I can be, or the best musician I can be, or the best professional I can be, how does fear of failure come up? And how can that affect us?
It can limit you taking risks.
Yes. Yes. Nothing good ever comes from holding back. And this is something we tend to forget. Champions have failed more times than you could count and made more mistakes than you could count. But when we're young, especially when we're young, we are afraid of making mistakes. Why? Yeah, you might get in trouble by your parents, teachers, coaches, whatever. What else? What's that? Yeah, it could be embarrassing, or, because especially in sports, you're doing it in a public arena, and so it'd be like, oh, everyone saw that I made that mistake, that I haven't made in practice ever, but I just made it in a game. And then frustration, we're putting everything we have into it. We don't want to let ourselves down. We might not want to let our team down, coaches down, parents down, family, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so what's good advice in terms of how to overcome that? Does everyone know the difference between the growth mindset and fixed mindset in psychology? What's the fixed mindset?
You only think you're good for one thing, you're destined to do it.
The fixed mindset could be, I'm good at this, but I'm not good at that. And so we limit ourselves. Okay? It might be, I'm just not good at math. Well, with that attitude, you're never going to find out. Right? Or I'm only good in this sport or not that sport. Or I'm just not confident, other people are born confident. Like we talked about, all these are developed skills. So what is the growth mindset in contrast?
You're temporarily not good at it, but with practice you do not good at it.
Absolutely. We could all get better at anything. Tom Brady. Who's Tom Brady? Do you guys know his story? He's considered right now maybe one of the top 5 NFL players ever. He went to University of Michigan. He was literally the 7th-string quarterback. I don't know why they had that many, but they had walk-ons and so on. He didn't play until his junior year. In this age of entitlement and, instant gratification, he had to sit on the bench for 2 years. So he finally gets a shot. He's neck and neck with another quarterback, so they switch playing time together. And he was only really a full-time starter his senior year. Okay? What round or what number pick did he get selected in the draft after he graduated from Michigan? So the NFL draft. 6th round, 199th pick. Most of those guys don't last very long in the NFL. He didn't start right away, but he kept working on all his skills. He would go there during off hours and actually ask the security guards to let him in and say, don't tell anyone. This it's kind of embarrassing for him, because it's like, I got to do extra just to even have a chance here. Approaches practice like a champion, did all the extra stuff, went the extra mile, finally got his chance, took advantage of it, and he hasn't looked back. And he still kind of uses that for motivation, though. But But now he's one of the best ever. But when we see someone like that on TV, we just, oh, he's always probably been good. He just looks like a great player. You know, I'm not like that. So we give those performers, once they've succeeded, way too much credit. And then we give ourselves not enough credit. Does that make sense? Who won the NBA Finals this year and who won the NBA MVP this year? Golden State Warriors. What? Well, he won the Finals MVP. Who won the league MVP? Good one, though. Steph Curry. Does anyone know his story? So we just talked about Tom Brady. His father played basketball at West Virginia. So he Steph Curry wasn't the most highly recruited player coming out of high school. He said to himself, you know, at least I could probably go to West Virginia. That's where my dad played. They didn't want him. He ended up going to Davidson College, which is a good college, small, tiny college in South Carolina, or in North Carolina. Worked his butt off, worked his tail off, did everything extra, used visualization. He's talking about self-talk, visualization, all the things that, you know, sports psychology skills. Made it to the NBA, and he was in a Kobe Bryant like summer camp. And people were like, who are you? Why are you here? You're not good enough. Because there were some, you know, top college players, top pro players. But they saw that, whoa, he's coming early, he's staying late, he's asking questions. He had the growth mindset. How can I get better? You know, he wasn't trying to look cool. He was just, how do I get better? So he kept working hard, year after year. He wins the MVP and the NBA title this year. And then we look at him, and what did the announcer say? He has such, what did they say? He has such a natural shot, his jump shot. It's not natural. He makes it look natural because of all the hard work he put in. Okay, but getting back to the topic. So fear of failure is I don't want to put everything I have into this and then fail, but the only really failure is not putting everything you have into it. Because if you put everything into it and you have that growth mindset, you're going to go pretty far at whatever you want to do. And you're going to accomplish great things, and you're going to be proud of yourself, and you're going to have peace of mind and all that good stuff. And you might really surprise yourself. And life's going to be more interesting. Now, this is actually a bigger one, though. Fear of success or risk of success. Why is that a big one? You know, whether in the classroom or on the field. Why is that a big one?
You get a lot of attention.
How so?
Well, if you're successful, then you're singled out.
Yes. So, you know those lists like you'll see in magazines, like popular magazines, they'll be like, you know, the 50 most popular athletes in the world and then the least 50 popular athletes, you know, the most hated popular or most hated athletes in the world. What's fascinating about those kind of lists is there'll be the same people on both lists. You'll see like Tiger Woods is one of the most popular athletes in the world and one of the most hated athletes in the world. Or LeBron James is one of the most, you know, favorite athletes in the world and one of the most hated. So we hate successful people, which is really fascinating. So part of us love successful people. Part of us are really despise them because it's like it's not fair and we're jealous and, you know, we pick them apart. So one of the things that we're worried about, I think, is if I'm really successful, how are people in my family or friends, how are they going to treat me? You know, are they going to be jealous? Are they going to be negative? Are they going to, you know, is that going to change our relationship? Okay. What else? So one is we take a lot of heat, you know. I remember in the U.S. Open this year, I don't know if there are a lot of golf fans, but we could all relate. U.S. Open, Dustin Johnson, 3 putts the last hole, just misses out on a playoff, and Jordan Spieth wins the U.S. Open. And everyone just says Dustin Johnson choked, he's terrible, he can't win the big one. The guy finished second in the world in the biggest tournament, or, you know, one of the 4 major tournaments in the world in golf, makes over $1 million, and everyone says, oh God, he's terrible. So talk about perspective. You know, I wish I had a week that bad where I made $1 million, finished second in the world at something. You know, look at the Olympics, and this is how weird our society is. Look at the Olympics. You feel bad for the guy that gets second place or third place or fourth place in the Olympics. That's incredible, you know? So we kind of do have that love-hate thing. And then when people are first, like LeBron James, wins a couple titles, MVP, what does he hear? Well, you're not as good as Jordan. You can't win. You can't win. So successful people get criticized the most. And so if Dustin Johnson, in that example with the golf at the U.S. Open, if he finished 20th place, people would have said, hey, it's a pretty good job. You're not too bad. You know, you could build on that. But he finishes second, everyone says you're terrible. So that's stuff that kind of goes on, you know, subconsciously that we need to be aware of for ourselves so we don't hold ourselves back. Because, so I guess what I'm saying at is the higher, there's a saying I heard New levels bring new devils. So the higher you go up, people start to kind of chip away at you. Okay? The other thing with fear of success or risk of success is the better you do, the better you have to do, because the bar is set so high. So if you get a 4.0 one semester, well, there's nowhere to go but down, or you win a big game, well, then you got to win next week, or what happens. So subconsciously, I think we hold back a little bit going, God, if I do really well, I'm going to be in the spotlight. I don't know if I'm ready for that. People are going to take shots at me. And then the expectations are going to be, I have to live up to that. And that's these incessant demands that are placed on you. And so eventually that does lead to fear of failure, like I'm not going to be able to handle all that. But at first comes all the demands placed on you. Because I've actually worked with pro athletes that said, I don't want to be Tiger Woods. I don't want to be number one. I want to be able to go to a restaurant and people not, thousands of people want my autograph, or, be interviewed every minute, or, I want a somewhat normal life. Okay? But the success part we could deal with. We'll worry about being number one in the world and having all those autograph requests later, But part of it is just realizing that we hold ourselves back. Part of it's the messages we get in society too. So we're given mixed messages like, be confident, but don't be cocky, or think big, but be realistic, or, so we're it's kind of confused, like, we don't know what is possible, okay? But my whole thing in sports psychology is, I'd rather you have too big of goals than too small of goals. And then, I think parents sometimes, especially moms, will be, I don't want you to get disappointed, be realistic, all that stuff. I don't think that's a great strategy. So talk about gender differences really quickly. And these are just generalizations, but most of the elite female athletes I work with had a father or a grandfather that said, you could do this, you could go all the way. Most of the time their mom said, I just want you to be happy, you don't stress yourself out, don't go for it, Part of it is because, safety, concern, But, so fear of success is even more of a challenge for women, okay? Why is that? So one, I just said mothers, but why is that? If I'm working with a men's team, well, I'll explain this a little bit, but think about this. So I'm working with a men's team. Who's the most popular guy on the team usually? The best player. When I'm working with a women's team, who's sometimes the least liked player on the team? The best player. Sometimes she's the most popular, sometimes it's in the middle, but it's very rare when I work with a men's team to ever see anything like that. Usually that's our teammate, he's awesome, we're really proud of him, it's great being on the same team. With women athletes, I'll say, hey, your teammate just won the Pac-12 Player of the Week or whatever. And one of her teammates will say to me, she's not that good. Where does that come from? Now, at first it sounds like a knock on women. It's actually a compliment, and I'll get to that in a minute. But where does that come from? Yeah, well, competition versus what? Cooperation. So, and again, these are all generalizations, but women want to fit in and collectively help everyone. So that's where a lot of fear of failure comes from. Like, I don't want to let my team down. I don't want to let my family down. I don't want to let my coach down. But then in sports, you also kind of have to stand out and stand apart. So for women, a lot of times it feels like damned if I do, damned if I don't. If I do really poorly, I've let everyone down. If I do really well, all the other girls are going to hate me. So even though you're helping your team, if it's a team sport, you're standing apart from your team. You're getting kind of extra recognition, and then you almost feel guilty about that. So just to give you an example, I might work with one top swimmer I work with, high school swimmer here in state. She said, I had a bad practice today, or something happened at practice. And I said, what happened? She said, well, coach said, they were doing the planks. You know what a plank is when you're kind of down like that. And coach said, look at her. She's doing it perfect. So all the other girls look at her and try to do it like her. And she's like, the whole practice she could hear, she wasn't doing it that perfect. So it's really competitive. Now, the good news, though, is when women do really bond and have a strong relationship, they're way more bonded and special than any men's team I've ever worked with. So if they could get over that hump and just say, we're in it together, we're not going to hold each other back, we're really proud of each other, they're stronger and more cohesive than any men's team I've ever worked with. So it's kind of like a little challenge up front, but then overall it's actually a good thing. And it's kind of related to family systems because, I don't know how much of this is genetic or cultural or whatever, but a lot of times it's women's responsibility to kind of hold the family together and worry about everyone, and the oldest daughter seems to be the most responsible and all that. And so I think on a team you start seeing those dynamics. So, any questions about that? So the most successful women athletes that I've ever worked with have said, if I mention that to them, what we just talked about, they say, oh yeah, I had to deal with all that, and I just had to get over it. And I just had to realize that, they meant well, but I just had to listen to my family or close girlfriends, or if I was lucky to have a teammate that didn't get jealous, then, her and I would talk. But most of them say, yeah, that happened to me all the time. Okay? So that is one kind of disadvantage that you need to be aware of in terms of what do you really want in terms of success, because success can be lonely, it can be difficult, it can be isolating, okay, it can be challenging. So I think we kind of know this subconsciously, so we hold back. But then we limit ourselves. So, the other thing related to that is, like I said, we live in a society that kind of has a love-hate relationship with success. So what I tell athletes is, unless you're clearly the best player in the world, and no one would doubt that, no one wants to hear you talk about how great you are. Okay? Now, LeBron James got away with that during the NBA Finals. He said they lost the first game, they won the second game, I think it was, and they said, how'd you do it? You're missing two of your best players on your team. And he said, well, because I'm the best basketball player in the world. And they're all kind of like, the reporters were like, well, okay, it's probably true. But imagine if anyone else had said that. So here's what I tell athletes. You can't talk like that. You got to tone it down, learn to tone it down in terms of public, socially. But in your head, you should still think that way. I'm number one. There's no reason not to step into a classroom or on the court or, in the audition and not think you're number one. And if you don't think you're number one, you've already set yourself up for not doing your best. Okay? So what I tell athletes is respect your competition, but respect your own talent even more. Okay? So it's not like you have to hate your competition. It's just, usually when athletes are, I'm not that confident. So my response is, why are you giving so much credit to your competition? Why are you loving their abilities more than your own? Now, if it doesn't work out, well, what'd you learn? And how can you do better next time? And maybe you figured out a way to beat them next time. Does that make sense? Okay, so the motto of my book that's going around is champions think gold and never settle for silver or bronze. And what I mean by that is settling for silver or bronze is doing less than our best. Okay? Personal gold is your ultimate victory. Okay? Too often we get caught up in winning and losing and grades and kind of the external kind of things. Peace of mind really does come from I did my best effort, I had my best attitude, I gave it my best shot, I could live with what happens, and then the growth mindset. What did I learn that's going to help me next time? Okay? But too often in life, because of that fear of failure or fear of success, we settle for silver or bronze. And so that's a key. So actually we don't look at it that way, but we're actually just giving up on ourselves. And we're loving everyone else more than ourselves. And again, we rationalize it to ourselves by saying, well, I just want to be realistic, or I don't want to get disappointed, or I don't want to get my hopes up. Why not? You can handle that. Again, if you have the growth mindset, who hasn't failed? Who hasn't screwed up? And that's what really a champion's all about, is getting knocked down and then getting back up. And that's why we love those stories, like who's the famous boxing story? Rocky. Why do we love that story? Because it's kind of, imagine if Rocky had just won all the time. No one would have gone and seen that movie. It wouldn't be that special. But he started from nowhere, made it almost to the top, got knocked down, came back and won. That's what we could do in our own life. Okay? But usually we get knocked down once or twice and it's like, oh, forget it. And that's when we settle for silver or bronze. Okay? So you got to think like the Terminator. That's another movie. What makes the Terminator so terrifying? And there's the 5th movie that just came out, so he keeps coming back and back. But what makes him terrifying in that movie? You can't get rid of the guy. You know, you hide, you run, he's going to keep coming back and back and back and back. That's what a champion is. So most of us, again, look at it, because we live in a highlight reel culture where it's kind of like, you know, like I was saying about Tom Brady. Tom Brady was a Terminator. Steph Curry was a Terminator. We usually don't think about it. We just think, well, they started on top, they stayed on top, they've always been good. But we don't realize they were the Terminator that kept getting knocked down, knocked down, knocked down. No one believed in them. They kept coming back, coming back, coming back, and eventually they win. And then, again, the media will say, oh, they're just natural, which is the opposite of the case. So you got to be like the Terminator in your life. And it's just like, come back stronger. You know, I got knocked down in this one class, or I got knocked down in this one game. Okay, how can I come back stronger? And that's what really life, and that's resilience. And that's so important. Because again, we live in a highlight reel culture where it's kind of like, what do we do when we watch SportsCenter? What do they show on SportsCenter? All the exciting plays, highlights. You know, even if you turn on any basketball game or football game, are they showing, no offense, but are they showing Utah State versus, you know, if anyone's from Utah, are they showing Utah State versus like Colorado State? No, they're showing Alabama, Nebraska, and Oregon, and all these schools. So we're really skewed in terms of when we watch TV, we're just seeing the best of the best of the best, and usually those who are having their best game. So if you're watching, let's say, a golf tournament on TV, you're watching the best golfers in the world, and then are they showing the ones that just made the cut, or are they showing the ones near the top of the leaderboard? So you're watching the best in the world do what they do, and they might be having the best week of their life. And so we get a really skewed idea of like, oh, that's what it should look like, and that's, you know, and I should never make mistakes, and it should be that easy, and all that stuff. But you don't see the half of all the pro tour players get knocked out in the first 2 rounds. They get cut, and they have to go home. They don't make any money. We don't really think about that. We just think of, oh, that guy won the tournament, made $1 million, and all that stuff. But yeah, the adversity part is a big deal. So the key is how you talk to yourself, again, getting the self-talk. You know, are you going to say, I don't, you know, I'm going to use this as an excuse not to believe in myself, or how am I going to find a way to make me stronger? Okay. What questions are coming up? We talk about peak performance, personal excellence, mental health issues. Let me give you a couple quick school tips. Think of if you have any questions, though. Okay, I'm going to give you 3 school tips I don't want you to ever forget. Okay? Number 1, do not fall behind. It's the most important school tip you could ever get. Now, is that always possible? No, but do your best not to fall behind, or fall behind as little as you possibly can. So, you know, if you get sick, or you have to miss a week, or there's something that happens in the family or whatever, yeah, you might fall a little bit behind. But it's the most important tip is just most students, and so think about this, you might say, well, okay, it's a little too late this semester, but you could go, well, I'm not going to fall behind the rest of the semester, or next semester, or next year, or beyond. Because I just see high school and college, kids are busy, lots going on, and it's so easy just to go, you remember the motivation, I don't feel like doing it tonight. So we start falling a little bit behind. And then all of a sudden we're playing catch up the whole time. That's stressful. And that's especially important for a student athlete, because if you got that on the back of your mind, again, you're going to go into practice and in games thinking, oh God, I got to do so much homework after practice tonight, or after this. So if you could stay on top of your studies, it just gives you that, it's just such a great stress relief and gives you that peace of mind, whether you work or play sports or whatever you do. So do not fall behind. And the best way not to fall behind is just to do a little bit each day. So, and you could think of it, it's kind of obvious. It's kind of like mass practice versus distributed practice. So distributed means practicing a little bit each day, versus mass practice in a sport would be, imagine trying to play tennis better if you only practice once a week for 12 straight hours. That's not smart strategy. But if you practice a couple hours each day, you're going to get more out of it. Same thing if you study a little bit each day versus trying to cram at the end. So part of that one, in terms of studying a little bit each day, is reward yourself after you finish your homework, not beforehand. So most of us, what we'll do is we'll say, okay, after I watch my show, after I hang out with my friends, after I, go to the mall, then I'm going to do my homework, and then, oh, it's too late, got to go to bed. Reward yourself afterward. So say, once I get my homework done, then I can do whatever I want the rest of the night or the rest of the weekend. And that really frees you up, because number one, if you know you're putting stuff off and procrastinating, you're not going to enjoy what you're doing in the moment anyway. And then by the time you get to it, you're going to be less likely to want to do it. So be really good at just, one really successful student athlete I worked with, she said at ASU, she said she would get up at 5 a.m., she'd go to bed really early, so part of it, she got a sleep schedule. She'd get up at 5 a.m., get all of her homework done by 7, just study 2 straight hours, no one would bug her. She'd get it done, and then she just said she just loved enjoying the rest of the day. And so that really worked for her, and that's where she would just do a little bit each day for 2 hours, but that's it. And then she was freed up the rest of the day to focus on just listening in class or working hard in the weight room or, at the practice field. So, but the next one would be compete in the classroom. So the first one we kind of, a couple little tips after it, but first one is do not fall behind. The second one is compete in the classroom. And that's really having a champion's mindset or attitude. Because most of us, let's be honest, when we get an assignment or extra credit, when you guys were coming here today, I'm sure you weren't deliriously happy, and you're thinking, oh God, another thing on my plate, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. That's not a great attitude. So you gotta be like, cool, teacher gave me this assignment, how well can I do it? Not necessarily rush it, but how fast can I get it done? How well can I do it? What am I gonna learn? I'm gonna show the teacher how much, how good I am at this subject. You look at it as a challenge, in other words. But most of us look at it as a threat, like, oh God, what if I fail? What if I don't get a good grade on there? How's it going to affect my GPA? That's not the champion's mindset. Okay. Third one, I'll give you third main one. I would say ask questions. Now, it doesn't have to be always during the class, but it could be going to office hours or even forming study groups or asking each other. Because that's one of the things I've learned from champions is they're not too proud to get help. So let me give you a story. I'm going to throw ASU under the bus for a minute, ASU football. But you remember, this was a little before your time, but remember when USC football, they're going through a rough patch right now, but when Coach Pete Carroll was the coach there, they won three out of 4 national championships. I think they won 3 national championships. They had Carson Palmer, who's the quarterback for, and he won the Heisman Trophy but he's with the Arizona Cardinals football team now. But anyway, so I work with NFL Combine guys each year, the best college guys. And all the USC football players that I'd work, as part of the whole Combine would come up to me and say, can I ask you a question about this? Can I work with you privately? Can I, they would come early, they would stay late. And I'm like, this is really impressive. And now, to be tough on ASU football for a second, when I would go talk to their team, no one ever did that. They'd be like, oh, we're good, it's cool. They didn't have that, they weren't interested in, they wanted to look cool, so they didn't have the growth mindset. It's like, oh, I got everything I need to know. They didn't win any national championships. People like the most successful people are willing to say, I don't know, help me. Jack Nicklaus, the famous golfer, he's like, hey, I got caddies, I got sports psychologists, I've got trainers, he didn't care. He looked at that as cool. I'm trying to be the best I can be. Michael Jordan, all these guys. They looked at practice as important too. Remember the Allen Iverson thing about practice? He was a basketball player for Philadelphia 76ers, and he would show up late. He was the team captain. He'd show up late to practice. And so one time that he was being interviewed, and all these reporters were there, and they said, you should look it up on YouTube. It's hilarious. But they said something like, you're missing practice. And he's like, practice? Practice? Like, who cares about practice? And it was funny because he kept repeating the word practice over and again because he just didn't understand, like, why would that be important and what does that have to do with leadership and all that stuff? Whereas this was during the same time Michael Jordan won 6 NBA titles. And one of Michael Jordan's quotes that I really like is I'm here to win even at practice. Practice is everything, And he looked at practice as no different than the NBA Finals. He really didn't. He's like, I'm here to win. I'm going to show my competitive spirit. I'm trying to get better. So a point in a scrimmage at practice for Michael Jordan meant the same thing as a point during the finals, NBA Finals. So that's actually a secret in terms of champions, in terms of how they look at practice versus competition. Because most of us look at practice as, it's not that important. I know it's important, but I just need to get through it today. And then, oh my God, we have the big game coming up. I'm stressed out. That's the typical mindset. But the champion's mindset is every day's game day. It's just some days the scoreboard's on. So they're gunning for it every day. They're practicing to their max every day. And that's like those USC football players. They had to do that because they might have 4 or 5 guys at their position that were high school All-Americans that they had to compete against in practice just to even play. So they realized, okay, we got to find any edge we can. We got to get better every day, and I got to out-practice my teammates today to even have a chance of playing in the game. So, but we do that with school too. So how many of us go, it's class today. I just want to get through it, get it over with, and then we freak out during midterms and finals. So the key there is look at regular class time as kind of like a midterm or a final. This is important. What am I going to learn today? Take good notes, pay attention. Study a little bit each day, all that stuff we talked about. Think of it like an athlete. And then when you get to the midterm or the final, it's just a fancy day. It's just a fancy school day. It's not anything harder or more difficult or more stressful because you're prepared. So champion athletes, they actually downplay the big game. It's the same stuff I do every day. They look at it as a fancy practice, the very best ones, because they don't do anything different in practice. They're always giving their best. Questions coming up? Any jokes? Yep.
So when you talk about different levels of athletes, how they are in elementary school and then they go to the high school level and then they get recruited, go to college, become pros, go to the Olympics. On that succession that you see as far as psychology, how is that impacted now rather than before? Like, I went to the University of Florida, was there with Derek Torres. That was never offered to us.
The sports psych or the?
Yeah, like as a team or, I don't know, I feel like now this is so much great information.
Yeah.
And it's.
Well, it's interesting. That's changed a little bit. Like counseling, unfortunately, I love counseling. It's I think that, well, let me tell you a quick story about the growth mindset. So one student athlete at ASU one time, he came to me, and we had worked together his freshman, sophomore year, and he did great. He went through a little rough patch at first, and he ended up doing great and accomplishing everything he wanted to accomplish in the classroom and on the football field. And so he came back his senior year to my office, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And he said, nothing, I'm doing great. And I said, so how can I help you? He's like, I don't know, I just wanted to come back and see you. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, I'm not going to have these services once I leave here. Why not take advantage of all this? So he had that growth mindset, like this is, if anyone wants to help me on, whether it's sports nutritionist, sports psychologist, professional counselor, math tutor, he's like, this is fantastic. But how many of us are like that? So number one is the availability is getting, is becoming bigger in terms of there's more sports psychology professionals out there and more interest in it. But there still is that little bit of good enough, And I think that the people that really want to see how great they can be look for, okay, who's going to help me with my mental game? Because usually we leave it to chance or circumstance, And let me give you just a quick story about that. So you mentioned swimming. Ariana Kukors, she was an Olympic swimmer, but before she finally made it to Olympics, she finished 3rd place in Olympic trials 4 years before that. So she missed out because they only have the top 2 spots in each type of race. She was leading. It was, I think, a 200 IM, so they had 4 laps. And in the final lap, she was leading the race. And if she just held on, she would have made it to the Olympics that year. But she freaked out, choked, stressed out. Oh my God, there's 2 world-class swimmers right behind me. I didn't picture this, and they passed her. So think about all the years of training she put in, all the hard work, all the nutrition, all the physical stuff, all the getting up at 4 a.m. and going swimming. And mentally, she had never visualized herself being in that situation, like we talked about, and overcoming it, or just finishing strong. And so that just shows you that the mental game really is the big difference between whether we, go best times or whether we have our, just miss out. And so that's why I love working on the mental game, because it really is the difference maker. When you guys think, when I've had my best performance ever in sports, what was I thinking? I was confident, I was focused, I was in the moment, I was having fun. When I had my worst performance, I was nervous, stressed out, distracted, all that kind of stuff. So your performance always hinges, your physical performance always hinges on your mental performance. But it's interesting though, so nowadays we're less likely to leave it up to chance like what she did. And she ended up realizing, okay, I got to work on something here, because she didn't see herself as being the best. So she realized after that race, okay, I need to work on my mental game. She did. She made the next Olympics. But talk about dedication. She had to go 4 more years of training to even have a shot at it. But yeah, usually I see most athletes are a little more receptive to sports psychology, like, okay, that's cool, how's it going to help me, versus counseling. I don't have a problem, And counseling's not about problems, it's about being the best you can be, and maybe discussing something that happened that was tough for you that you need to talk about and learn from. So getting back to that athlete that came, the football player, be like that guy. Hey, if I need counseling, or I want counseling, or it might be a good idea, take a chance, take a risk, go for it. If I'm an athlete and I want to work more on my mental game, I'm going to read about it. I'm going to talk to someone about it. I'm going to get help. Okay? Make sense? Okay, other questions?
How if you get people you get inside your head and stuff and psych you out, how do you prevent that from happening during a game? I played tennis, and I know when I would be start to lose, I'd start to mentally freak out. How do you prevent yourself from getting to that spot?
Yeah. One thing is, so everyone do this. So everyone sit over, hunched over, and look like you're really sad and bored and stressed out and negative, and you're losing a tennis match. Everyone's watching. Okay, now everyone sit up straight, look up, put a big smile on your face. Okay. Now, so one quick thing with that though is body language. So one of the things I work with athletes on is body language, because if your body language is down like that, what are you selling? What are you telling the other team or your opponent? What? Yeah, you're saying beat me now, right? So one thing in terms of when we're not performing well is, we've all heard kind of fake it till you make it, but it's so important because number one, we're sending the message, the right message to our team, our coach, or maybe our fans and ourselves that I can handle this, I'm in control. I could, there's plenty of points left, plenty of game left in order to turn this around. But the fascinating thing is physiologically this helps you too. So there's a study at Harvard where, this position is called the contracted position. So they had college subjects sit like that for 2 minutes versus sit like the open champion posture, or everyone do this, put your hands on your hips and kind of chin up a little bit, back straight. That's kind of like Superman or Wonder Woman pose. What they found is, so you compare the two groups on mental and physical tasks. The group that sat like this did better on the mental and physical tasks, because what it did is it increased your testosterone, reduced your stress hormones, put you in a better frame of mind emotionally, or mentally and emotionally, but also physiologically. So it's really fascinating. So body language, usually we act the way we're feeling, but you gotta, if you wanna, it's important to feel the way you wanna act too, or vice versa. So in other words, if you're losing, so here's kind of a roundabout way, if you're losing, never show that you're losing on the outside. Does that make sense? Because that's kind of freaky to the competition, because they're thinking, okay, we're winning, why, what's going on here? Maybe I'll win today, but I can't break this guy's spirit. So that's a big one. I remember one year I was mentioning ASU football. They just beat NAU, and I said to the guys, I met with them afterward, and I said, when did you guys know you were going to win that game? And they said, when they walked out on the field, they looked at the NAU players, and the NAU players looked at them, and the NAU players kind of dropped their head, and they're like, oh God, these guys are big, and they go, right there, we knew we had them. So that's important. The other thing too is you got to love that competitive spirit. So if you're playing in a game and they make a run at you, it's like, okay, let's make a run right back at them. So usually what we're doing is we're getting too caught up in the end result. Am I going to win? Am I going to lose? I'm behind, all that stuff. So champions focus on the process. So it's like, how am I going to win this next point? And what do I need to do to play my best this moment? That kind of stuff. And then you let the end result take care of itself. Because usually we start worrying about losing or anticipating victory. And champions are just right here, right now. So you almost, it's easier said than done, it takes a little practice, but it's almost like when the game ends or the match ends, you almost want to be surprised, like, oh, who won? Because you're that focused in the moment. And then it's either like, oh, I got them, or, oh, they got me, but I'll get them next time. But that was so much fun competing. Because again, we live in a society that's all about results, but the best way to get results is not to think about them in the moment. So what I tell athletes is, away from the game or the tournament or the match, think about your goals, think about what you want to accomplish, think about your personal bests, all those things that you want to achieve. But the closer you get to the game, I just want you to focus on, how do I make each play have a life of its own? Does that make sense? Because, like just, for example, if you're taking an exam and you're thinking, if I fail this, if I win, if I get 100%, and all that, while you're taking the test, you're not going to do as well on the test. It should be, okay, I'm prepared, let's go enjoy this. This is a challenge, and then I can live with whatever happens. And then you just focus on one question at a time until you're done. So part of it's where we place our focus, but body language is a big one. So think about how you sit in class. And think about that too when you're driving and you're tired, you start acting tired when you're driving. But if you sit up straight and put a big smile on your face, you're going to feel less tired. Now again, does that work perfectly? No, but why not put your best foot forward? Everything you do. Okay, other quick questions?
You talked about the competitive mindset, and like in my high school years, I did cross country and track, and I just never had that. Is there a way to like get that competitiveness? I know it's weird, like
No. No, usually what I find though is most men compete better when they're a little mad and kind of like a little chip on their shoulder. Most women when they're happy. So a lot of the stuff that coaches do to women athletes to try to get them psyched up and motivated, it doesn't help. And in fact, it kind of just, why are they talking like that? So for most women athletes, it's just like, hey, let's have fun with my teammates and let's just go love it. And the more fun you have, the better you do. Most guys kind of need a little bit of like, okay, they don't think we can do it. Like, I'm going to prove you wrong, and that kind of little extra edge. But for most women, it's just, I remember one ASU softball player, and this is the year they won a couple national championships. This is the year they won a national championship, and the player, she was one of the better players on the team, and they were loaded. She was in a slump, and I said, well, what's your mindset when you're going up to the plate? And she said, have you ever seen the TV show Law and Order? And I said, yeah. And she goes, the music at the beginning, da-da-da-da. She said, I feel like that when I go up to bat. And so I said, well, obviously you're getting too serious and uptight, and you're thinking probably about results and batting average and trying to win the game on one pitch and all that kind of stuff. What would be the perfect soundtrack for you? And she said, The Simpsons. So every time she'd go up to bat, she would listen to The Simpsons in her head, and she'd be happy and, just kind of like in her words, just go up there like an airhead, see the ball, hit the ball, and she just went on an amazing hitting streak, and they win the national championship that year. So for most women, I hear, I just need to be an airhead out there. I need to be like a cave woman. I just need to keep it simple and fun. But coaches, see, this is the problem though with coaches mean well, but a lot of times the bigger the event, so this kind of brings it all back together, the bigger the event, they start going, okay, we got to take this serious, and you guys are having too much fun, and you got to pay attention, and so they stress out their athletes. And then they also, because they're worried about them not doing well, they try to give way too much information. So they remember to do this, remember to do that, and then you're like these bloated bobbleheads out there with just too much information, and then you just like are paralyzed out there. Whereas the best coaches say, you know what, we're going to practice like we're going to play like we're going to practice. And then on game day, they just keep it, hey, let's go have fun. Let's go let it rip. Free it up, let it rip. And then, I got your back. I'm not going to chew your head off if you make a mistake. The best coaches will actually say, go out there and make some mistakes because it shows you're trying. But most coaches say, we can't make any mistakes out there today. And then, good luck. So I like John Calipari. He's the coach of Kentucky men's basketball. They won the national championship a couple years ago. He would tell his guys that. He would say, because they're all perfectionistic, high school All-Americans, he would say, I want you guys to go out there and make mistakes. If you're not making enough mistakes, I'm going to pull you. Okay? But he said, if you make too many mistakes, I'll pull you as well. So I thought that was funny. So thanks a lot, guys. Bye.